Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's October 4th, 2022, and I thought what I'd do is make a video sort of explaining what the general plan is at this point in time in October of 2022 for the Western garden plot. Every year our plans pretty much changed based on the successes, the amount of effort, the time involved, and and what the products are at the end of the season and all. So over here in the Western garden plot, we used to grow all of our different annual crops over here for years, and then gradually we've been switching over to perennials. One of the reasons why this is a good place to switch to the perennials is because this has the kennel panels, chain link fencing around it, and it's got the building here up against it. So that helps to protect whatever we're growing in here, at least from the large mammals. So here's our blueberry beds here that we've been growing blueberries in, the honeyberries over here, which are somewhat similar to the honeyberries. And so our plan is for these two beds right here, we will be taking our blueberries that have been out in the first food forest and transplanting them into these beds in here. So that's one of the things I want to try and get done by fall. And it's fall right now, so we'll see if we can do it. So in order to do that, I've got to prep these beds. And in order to prep these beds, and so what do I mean by prepping the beds? One, it has to have lots of good organic material in it, but we have to acidify this soil. This is all soil that I built over the years from wood chips and from composting. And it's not as acidic as blueberry plants really like. So I'm going to have to acidify the soil some, so we're going to amend it with peat moss. And a couple of years ago when we did these beds, we put lots of peat moss, mixed it in with the material that we've got here that we've been building over the years. But before I can amend the beds, I got to get all of these corkscrew or curly willows out that we grew this season. And so you may recall earlier this season, we worked on the living fence over there. So some of these are going over to replace some of the ones that didn't survive this year. And so we'll go over to living fence in just a moment. So over in this area here, which I just cleared out all of the thornless triple crown semi-erect blackberry plants, this whole area in here, I think what we're going to do is put our thornless blackberry plants, because the deer eat them like crazy up in our big beds that are up front. They just love the blackberries. The other thing I mentioned the other day when I posted the video, when I was pulling out all of the thornless blackberry plants, I wanted to get some sand to put around and mix it in, or at least top dress all of the wood chips that are around the perimeter, because the wood chips gradually break down over time, and they'll probably break down another 8 to 10 inches. So this is already down a foot from when I built these beds, from when I built this area. So getting the sand will help to decrease the amount of change in depth over time. And so you may recall down and back by the beaver ponds, there's what was a vernal pool for years that I built a road across, and I just recently added more gravel to it to raise it up some. But I took out some of the dead trees from down there, and I also made the vernal pool into a canal system. And at the base of the canal system is all this sand. And so the other day I went down and I excavated out, took Elon down there and excavated out some of the sand, piled it up, and then yesterday afternoon I came up here with the Hulk and we dumped this right along the fence. So I've got to smooth this all out, and then I'll pick all of these kennel panels up with Elon and raise it above. And I will go ahead and I will rototill in here. I don't have time to do the rest of the things I thought about doing in here, but I will rototill this, try to get things leveled out some. I'll bring some of the compost up into the areas that are a little bit low as well. So that's the plan in here for right now. Oh, the other thing I did do, which I think it works out much better. So for years, now we love these weed mats. These weed mats work out fantastic. But there can be a drawback if you leave the weed mats down for long periods of time and the weeds start coming up. Like if the weeds start coming up and we had quackgrass here and the grass started growing over the top of it, they'll start sending roots down into the weed mat themselves. So when I put these kennel panels up, I took one weed mat and I laid it down along in here, and that suppressed all the weeds, and I just put the kennel panel right directly on top of the weed mat. But over time, the weeds started growing over on the top of that and sending the roots down into the mesh, even though these are really good weed mats, you know, multiple 5 layers thick. So they work extremely well. So I decided the other day, since the weed mats were, after, I don't know, probably 5 years, were starting to get to be an issue, I decided to pick up the chain link panels and put some blocks. So these are the same blocks that we use for the rumble wall, the handicap beds, and many of the pillars and hardscape features that we got around the property. So by putting the chain link panels on top of this, I can weed whack underneath these. It'd be ideal if these weren't blocky like this, because weeds will grow around the block, but that'll work as well. So we'll now go over to the living fence area here, where some of those curly willows or corkscrew willows will end up going over to the area that that has been modified a couple of times. So this spring, Thea and I planted a whole row of flowers down here, which the deer ate throughout the whole spring, so that was a wasted effort. Then some of the fencing that we had here, the cedar fencing, started to buckle, and so I ended up removing all of the cedar fencing. So you can see some along this area here, there's still the cedar fencing there. But we took that out. I straightened up all of the posts here, so these are all pressure treated posts. And I planted all along in here comfrey. And so this comfrey that came up, and it has done very well all along the fence. And I put lots of the cuttings of the curly willows here. And those curly willows, probably 50% of them took, and the other 50% didn't. The places where there's less mulch, there wasn't enough moisture, because we had another drought this year, and that was a significant challenge for us. So really fortunate that we did grow some over there where we had the drip irrigation. So now that it's fall, we can transplant those over in here as well. Another thing that I did do, you may recall the trees that I planted along in here. So we have, like, right here is an oak tree, then a honey locust, then a maple, then an oak, then another honey locust, and I believe that's a black locust, and another honey locust down there, I believe. So we got a couple of oaks here and all. One maple didn't make it, but all of these trees, because the winds come out of the northwest, were all bowing down in this direction. So they're at about a good 30-degree angle. So I brought Elon up here, and that's Elon over there, the Takushi TB290. And I decided I wanted to try and straighten these up. Now this maple here is one that I dug up out of pond 4 around the margin. One of the side roots, so that's a maple, so it doesn't have a big taproot. The oaks have a big taproot. The maples don't. This one big root snapped off, but I think it's going to survive. If it doesn't, I'll deal with it. Now we used to have lots of elderberry plants along in here, and last year I decided, okay, I'm going to put a couple of the figs in here, and these have done extremely well. and we're in zone 5A here. So everything above the ground will die. So what I'm going to do is over the next couple days is start hauling out some of the fig trees that we haven't sold, and I'm going to be planting those right down here along where the trees are here, just like this one is planted. And then we'll be cutting these back probably just about a foot off the ground, insulating above them, and then we'll uncover them in the springtime and see how they do. Now you can see all this cardboard here as well. So in 2021, Thea was still working at the veterinary hospital, and she'd bring home cardboard every day, and any packages we got, we saved the cardboard. And so a year ago this time, I put all that cardboard in the dump trailer and I got laid up with my back, and I ended up dumping all of this out because we needed to use the dump trailer this year. I dumped it on the ground out by the sugar shack. So one of the things we're going to do, since we have lots of grasses and weeds growing up along this fence line here where the comfrey isn't and all, or where the trees aren't, so we're going to use the cardboard as a sheet mulching to suppress a lot of the weeds. It won't be perfect because a lot of these things are already partially broken down, but we'll do our best. But the other thing I'll probably start doing today is I start bringing out the fig trees. I'm going to use Elon to poke a few holes in the ground out here and start transplanting some of those fig trees down along in here. So those are some of my plans for the Western garden plot, taking some of the plants that are in the Western garden plot, putting them over here along the living fence. This is a project or a process that will take years over here, and even in the Western garden plot it will be. One of the things I would say is, you know, I'm a big one for 5-year plans, 10-year plans, that sort of thing. And I think that those are very advantageous. But I also think it's really good to take the time to reflect and to take a good look at how things are working out for you, what sort of modifications you may want to make so that your quality of life is as good as possible, so that the time you're spending doing things are very productive, very rewarding, and enjoyable. And as you get older, that's one of the things that I think about more, instead of thinking, well, I've got another 100 years to live. Now I'm thinking another 60 years potentially. So I want to make things so that I can go on out and back. One of the things I love is photography, videography, and I just haven't been doing that because of the projects that I've got, the major projects that I want to accomplish. So since some of the projects are getting these garden beds and living fences to a point where I'm not having to spend a lot of time maintaining them. So those are my thoughts. Large, long answer to a simple, quick question. What are you going to do over there in that Western garden plot? So I thank you all for your comments, your suggestions, and certainly viewing the videos and giving us thumbs up. We really appreciate it a lot. It makes posting these videos on YouTube much more pleasant, and we appreciate you. So thanks so much for watching, folks, and have a super fantastic day. Stay safe and make each day the very best you can. Bye-bye now.